capital gain is taxed at a lower rate than a revenue gain. A revenue gain is, for example, your salary or interest receipts. Now they want more from your shares and your house and all the rest of it. So what do? They increase the amount of these capital gains that is subject to tax. For a company, that goes up to 66%, and from an individual, it goes up to 33%. And once the tax rates are applied to this, they show that they are taking 18% of a company capital gain, and then they're subjecting it to their dividend tax, which means that on a company capital gain, by the time it even gets back to the shareholder, you're talking 32% of it gone in income tax. Whereas on the individual, it's only 13%. So the individual pays a lower tax rate than a company. And people like me spend our lives trying to persuade people, stop forming so many companies and paying so much tax. It's not clever to form a company anymore. It used to be. We used to have a wonderful thing about when in doubt, form a company. Now it works out, when in doubt, keep your money in your own name. And they've also gone further, that they've increased the capital gains tax on trusts. Now, the wealthy use trusts for various reasons, to pay less death duty and all the rest of it. Well, they've made that a little bit less palatable, and now, if you're taxed in a trust, you're taxed at twice the rate as you're taxed an individual. So again, it's showing private wealth is king in South Africa today. Also, the individual, to compensate for this, will be allowed to earn 30,000 rands of tax-free capital gains every year, and that's quite useful. Now, watch what it does. This is important. Zuma will tell you, I came in here when the market was at 18,000 points, JSE All Share Index. Today, we're up at 33,000 plus. Aren't I great? What does it do? If you had 100 rand in your pocket when Zuma took over in 2009, to keep pace with inflation, or CPI as we call it, you should be in the region of about 120 today. Money in a bank account that's been earning interest, which is taxable at the full rate of tax, won't have got even there. You will have gone backwards if you had your money in a bank account. But if your money had been in shares on the JSE All Share Index, you should be up at about 160. Reason? It's not only that the stock markets have done better, but shares are subject to a lower tax rate than interest. So tax is a game where one's looking and saying, it's not only wanting to make a profit, but what type of profits, because different types of profits are taxed at different types of rates. And it becomes a great big chess game where you're permanently looking to try and change the way that you put all of this together. So, investing money is not only a question of making a profit. It's also the type of profit that you are receiving, okay? And what you're always looking to do is to get a profit that is taxed at the lowest possible rate. The ultimate person who got this right was Mark Shuttleworth. Mark Shuttleworth sold his business 12 years ago, I think now, and he got billions for it. But it was before capital gains tax came into South Africa, so he paid absolutely zero tax on it. Had he done it 5 years later, he would have paid a lot more, but he got away with it tax-free, which is why he was able to go into space. You know, today he would have paid more than that to the receiver of revenue. Right. So now watch what happens and see the different places where taxes happen to you. If you want to save in your own name, let's say you want to buy shares or unit trusts or have interest. These are the different taxes you will pay. First of all, you will go and have to say, right, I've got to build up a pension. That's what we all save for. And let's have a look at it. When you retire, the first 100,000 of income that you receive when you retire will be tax-free. But to have enough capital to make that happen, to get 100,000 rand a year, the actuaries will tell you you'll have to save somewhere in the region of 1.5 million rand just to get 100,000 a year, maybe a bit more. And then, if you want to earn tax-free interest, well, you can earn tax-free interest in retirement up to 33,000 rand. So you can save that. That interest, although it's taxable, it's exempt. They give a little concession there. And then you will need money to pay for your medical. And they reckon any person who's retiring today should have about 500,000 rand stashed away to pay for their medical expenses. a heart bypass op with everything included, you are looking at 400,000 to 500,000 rand today. So you can't afford to retire without a medical aid. And then you put all of that together, and we say 3 million rand's a lot of money. But in fact, what you've got is that's after buying a house, and it's only going to give you an income of about 13,000 rands a month to live on, or 3 million rand. Capital doesn't go a long way anymore. And then we play games where we say, well, step 2 is to say, well, actually, we can make it better because you don't pay much tax really up to 250,000 rand a year. So we take more of these annuities. And so then we're saying, oh, okay, that's a lot better. Monthly income of 33,000 rands a month, and I'm still hardly paying any tax. And then we have to take it further into family financial planning, where we say mom is also a taxpayer. She might not even be working, but she's also taxed at the lower rates. So if mom has a pension plan, then what we do is we say we double the whole thing up. And we say, right, if we've got 2 pension plans, one for mom and one for dad, then you can have up to 66,000 a month on a good tax profile, and that will require 12 million rands worth of capital. And this is a very important thing, because in South Africa, we have this old thing about geld is mos pa se probleem. Dad's problem, the money. Mom, no, there's a credit card, don't look. And this is a terribly important thing, that as we go further, women must get their own financial plans. It's tax efficient to do that, and it's critically important in your own security. So that's something to watch out for in the future. Right, now we get on to the fun side of it. Transaction taxes. All the different taxes that you pay. And people come up to me and they say, Matthew, tell me how to save money. I say, stop spending so much. And they say, be serious. And I say, yes, half the taxes of the country come from VAT and all the other taxes that you pay as you go along. Every time you buy something, except the most basic foodstuff, 14% of it is going to government. And that's just a start, because transaction taxes are very, very worrying in South Africa. They cannot increase the VAT rate, because VAT has become a holy cow in politics. And nobody will let them increase the VAT rate. But consumer confidence is down. People are not in the shops. Or if they are, they're not spending money. So VAT collections are under pressure. Why is consumer confidence so low? Well, we have a new thing called the National Credit Act, which means you can't just go out and borrow money anymore. You've got fuel taxes, which we'll come to in a moment. Electricity taxes and increases because of the Eskom debacle, and rates and taxes on your properties, which have all gone up. And then they add education bills onto the top of that. So, what we are looking at are some staggeringly frightening figures. A barrel of oil was around about the $100 mark a year ago. But in rand term, it only cost 650 rand a barrel. Today, just a year later, we are over 900 rand a barrel, shooting for 1,000, which means that your fuel price has gone up 30% in a year. And that's before you get your annual tax increase. So when you look at it, you say, how much tax is there in a litre of fuel? And we say, right, 2 rand 61 last year, okay, diesel 2 rand 47, a little bit lower. Now, look at that and ask yourself a question. What's the average fuel consumption of a car? 10 liters per 100, right? So for every 100 kilometers that you drive your car, we're paying 26 rand 10 last year. This year, they've put the taxes up by 28 cents a litre, which means that you're paying 28 rand 90 for every 100 kilometers. But what happens, very different, we don't all drive cars that do 10 litres per kilometer. Everybody wants a 4x4, right? We want to spend a lot more than that. A big 4x4 is using 20 litres per 100 kilometers. So their tax, instead of being 28 rand per 100 kilometers tax, they're paying 56 rands per 100 kilometer tax. This is going to be a very interesting thing in private schools. Because if you look at the private schools in Johannesburg, Everybody's living out in Bryanston and Sandton. They load their kids up in a 4x4 in the morning and they drive them to St. John's, 20 kilometers. Drop them off, drive back to Sandton. Then drive back to St. John's in the afternoon to pick them up and put them back. They're not going to be able to afford to do that in the future. Fuel prices are going to be too expensive to move kids around willy-nilly. Dads are not going to be able to go to the office every day. They're going to have to start working from home, which is going to be a nuisance for everybody. It's going to change the way that we look at life. These taxes are going to continue to increase because they are carbon emission taxes, and as the carbon movement grows, they tax carbon more and more because it's an avoidable expense. Just this year, with a very moderate fuel price increase, the taxes from fuel will go up from 37 billion rand to 42 billion rand. It's a staggering amount of money. And that's before you get the increase for the price of the oil, the increase for the price of the pipelines and everything else. I have no doubt that Christmas time this year, fuel will be at 15 rand a litre. It's a massive increase. Well, let's tell you about some other tax. Let's lighten it up. Beer. Right. Every time you hear a can of beer open, click, a rand. That's the sin tax in the bottle. Then you add on to that the VAT. It's about another 30 cents. So every time somebody drinks a beer, 1.30 rand goes into the National Revenue Fund, and it pays pensions and everything else. You're making a donation to charity every time you drink. But beer was very, very low this year. If you take spirits, spirits went up by 7 rands a bottle. Now, that doesn't sound a lot if you think that there are 30 tots in a bottle. But let's think of it this way. Now we go to a pub. We go to the Rat down the road. And they're looking at it, right, we've got to pay an extra 7 rand a bottle, and there are 30 tots in a bottle. So my price per tot has gone up by 20-something cents. My markup, though, is 100%. If you're running a pub. So I'll make that 50 cents. And then the student comes in and says, I want a double. So what's happened? It's become a rand markup per drink. And they get a lot of money from that, unfortunately not enough to solve South Africa's problems. So they turn to the smokers. And they say, that's the other great form of tax in South Africa. Last year they put cigarettes up by 80 cents. Sin tax only, that's 9 rand in a packet. This year, in a packet of 20 cigarettes, you are paying 10 rands tax direct in sin tax, plus about another 4 rand in VAT. 55% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. They're the biggest taxpayers of all. A person who smokes 30 cigarettes a day is paying as much tax as a person who has a job that earns 130,000 rand a year. They're enormous taxpayers. And people don't realize what they're doing to each other. Now, we always hear about what you're doing to your health. Shall I show you what you do with your bank account when you smoke? Now, please, you can go to my website for this, criticalthought.co.za. And there's a little video that shows you this thing and how to use it. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's got 1 page of questions to ask. And you can do it to get somebody to quit smoking or whatever. What you do is you say, how old are you? This chap's 30. He wants to retire when he's 65. He smokes 30 cigarettes a day, and he's been doing that since he was 18 until he's 30. Okay, 34 rand a packet today. And he also smokes, he likes drinks as well, 48 beers a week. Started drinking when he was 18, when he was a student, and that's the price of a 6-pack, 35 rand today. And he has a bottle of tequila a week, and 2 bottles of wine. Now, 1 week, that doesn't look like a lot of money. How much would he spend in a lifetime? In today's term, cash on the table right here at Kingswood today. There you go. Up until age 30, from 18 to 30 on cigarettes alone, he has spent 223,000 rand. On beer, another 174,000, and then a bit more on wine and spirits. He has already gone up in smoke the price of a damn nice motor car, 447,000. And he's only 30. Then he carries on, and he does it from 30 to 65, and you'll see that he will spend, in today's money, another 651,000 on cigarettes, another 500,000 on beer, etc., etc. There goes another 1.4 million. Now, with luck, by the time he gets to 65, he won't need a pension because he would have smoked himself to death by then. But he might be like Keith Richards and just carry on forever, okay? So then he needs to save money in his pension fund to pay for his food and his drinks and his cigarettes in retirement. And that will be another R1,000,000. So in all, this guy, across a lifetime, in cash today, has spent 2.8 million rand drinking and smoking. And what you should do with that calculator is you have a look at it. You can work it out over 3 years, 10 years, whatever. Just take it down. It's a little Excel spreadsheet. It's not difficult to use. And you start showing people where their money is leaking away. Because wealth creation is not only about saving money. It's no point in saving money if it's all going out the door the other side. That's like trying to fill up a bucket with a hole in it. And we're trying to say to South Africans, it's time to change. Finishing off some smaller little things. We pay a tax called transfer duty on property. What you can see in the graph on the board there is quite simply that the property market has completely evaporated. Nobody wants property anymore. Why? And it's because young people say, I'd rather have an iPad. And give me an iPad and I'll go back home and live back home and live off mom and dad and play with my iPad. That's why. We're not getting any newcomers into the property market. It's amazing, when I left Rhodes University in 1983, nobody would be seen dead moving back in with their parents. That was just naff. Today, they all move back with their parents. And their dad say to them, when are you going to go and buy your own house? And the guy says, well, why should I? Me and my girlfriend, we're quite happy here. I've brought reinforcements. My girlfriend's living with me here as well. And we're drinking your beer, Dad, and you can pay the electricity bill and the rates bill and the insurance bill. And you know what, Dad? When you die, I'll inherit the place, so why should I buy a house? And this is where life has changed completely when it comes to houses. People are spending fortunes unnecessarily on their houses. The market is so stagnant at the moment that they haven't even pushed up transfer duty. They've even given concessions on capital gains tax to go with that. Those are smaller details. But what we are saying is transaction taxes in South Africa on everything that you pay are half the taxes of the country. If you want to save tax, you've got to cut back. And we're seeing people starting to do this. They're drinking less, they're smoking less, they're driving less. And there's a very nice thing about this. Because if we want to save the environment, with all of these taxes, particularly on fuel and electricity, people will use less. And it won't be the green movement that will bring down world carbon emissions. It'll be the tax movement. That's one of the realities in the whole thing. So, what can we say in conclusion? You survived this budget. It could have been a lot worse. I think generally it was a great thing. But there's a lot of work to be done. I haven't really looked at how we spend money in South Africa today. There's not time. Maybe another day. And what we've got to say is the way that we study changes. We study in the old days a famous case called Latchan, and that was something we used to spend a lot of time on. And whether it was capital revenue, now we're saying, no, what's important today is not that, but rather, where are you putting your money? Are you investing through a retirement fund? Are you investing in your own name? Because those things will determine how ultimately, whether you're successful or not in what you're doing. There are still huge opportunities. But what you've got to take away from this lesson is the biggest thing that you've got to watch out for. And that is, spare a thought for the other people involved. The old age pension went up to 1,200 Rand a month in the budget. And if you're over 75, you'll get 1,220 Rands a month to live on. For the month, that's your lot. And 2.5 million South Africans get that. And a child grant, which is now paid to 11 million kids in South Africa, is 280 Rands per month. And that's growing. But it's not the problem. The problem is the next group, the black void that I've left there, who get nothing. Your birthday present, your 18th birthday present in South Africa for many is a stuffed up education, you lose your child grant, and you can't get a job. Your prospects of getting a job within 4 years of matric are 1 in 5 for many. And that is something that you've got to think about. Because what you've got to take with that and say is, okay, that's the other side of the fence, fine. But what you've got to think about with it is this, the final lesson. That's what I call Costa Concordia syndrome. You can have as much money in the world as you like and go along all grand and all the rest of it. But in the Costa Concordia's case, when it fell over, everybody had to swim for themselves. And the same thing is the same position we're in South Africa with regard to your finances. If you've got money, you've got to look after yourself, because if you lose the whole lot and you make an expensive mistake and you're now on the street destitute, who's going to pick you up? You're in a queue behind 30 million other people. And this is another reason why taking your finances seriously, cutting back, being more frugal, is going to be a part of life as we know it going forward and into the future. Thank you very much. Saving a bit of tax here. Thank you very much.